Welcome to Rooted and Unwavering, a podcast and radio show which features leaders from all walks of life in conversations about courageous connectedness. How do we stay connected to our best selves, especially when we are challenged? What becomes possible when we truly stay committed to our own and others' greatness, also when we don't feel it? Join host Erica Schaper, transformational coach, facilitator, and award-winning author of Taming Your Crocodiles, and his guests as they explore leadership greatness in today's episode of Rooted and Unwavering.
Well, welcome everyone. Welcome back to Rooted and Unwavering, broadcasting live from Business RadioX Phoenix, and this time broadcasting live from the Netherlands. I'm in Giekerk, which is close to where I was born, and this is where we help leaders connect more deeply to their innate potential. I'm your host, Erica Schaper, and today is with me a friend, esteemed guest, and colleague on this path of connectedness, Erica Schaper. Erica, how are you today?
Thank you, Ilke. I'm fine. I'm very excited to be in your show, in your podcast, and to tell something about my way in life. And I had a busy day in the Netherlands. It's at the start of the evening already, but I'm very excited to be here. So, let's start, I would say.
Let's start. Well, as we get started, I want to let the listeners also know a little bit more about you. I'm going to share a little bit about you, also about how we met. And I still remember first when somebody started talking to me about you. I was working at the time in the university that you lead, NHL Stenden, and they said, "Oh yeah, you got to meet Erica. You know, she is so strong and so warm and so creative and so wise. You got to talk to her." And so then when I met you, I felt all those things. I see you as a deeply humane, a very wise, strategic, innovative, and daring leader. Looking at your bio speaks from that. You know, you don't do the tried and true. You do something new. So the school you lead, NHL Stenden, University for Applied Sciences in the north of the Netherlands, is a merger of schools in the past. It's a large school. You got lots of students with relationships in South Africa, in Thailand, and Indonesia. You have students from all over the world, 90 nationalities, it says, and you have this concept of design-based education. And you've been serving in public service and public leadership for a long time. Before this, you were the managing director for the Dutch trade union FNV, where you also helped guide a merger process of 5 organizations. You're also the director of the Van Gaal Larenstein University and interim manager for several other places. And throughout it all, I sense your innovative and daring spirit just lighting the path as a lighthouse, which for a Dutch person as like me, is a very strong metaphor. So that's a little bit about you. I'm so glad you're here today. So let's dive into this conversation, Erica, about connectedness, because that's what these podcasts are about, right? These podcasts are about helping people to connect more deeply to what is true, to their innate potential. And in each podcast, we hear from different leaders about their stories and learn from them. So tell me a little bit, and tell us a little bit about your journey and what you've been learning about being connected, staying connected, maybe getting disconnected over your leadership journey. Can you say a bit about that?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting what it is, being connected, and where what I think about was that there was one moment where I can go back to where I learned what for me is important in being connected, and that was when I met a colleague who had a theory about energy in organizations, and he made that very physical with some plates on the ground where I don't know exactly what the theory was, but you can really feel how it is to be in part of the organization. One of the plates was structure and course and meaning, and I thought, well, this is what I like working on. And I was standing on this plate, and actually nothing was happening. But there was another plate, and that means being part of a greater whole. a bit Ubuntu-like.
Mhm.
And I didn't know, I didn't have any image with that. But when I stand on that plate, I felt like a rocket, like I was, I fly into the air. So that moment is for me very important in my connectiveness, because I always know that in which situation I am, I have to feel what is the importance for the greater whole. Why am I doing this? What brings it to society? What brings it to people? And yeah, when I go back to that moment, I always can, till now find words for what it is, what I'm doing, and why I'm doing that.
That's so
So that
beautiful.
was an
That's so
important
beautiful.
moment. Yeah.
Yes, yes, that's so beautiful as you say that. And I see you like looking in the distance, and I'm imagining you standing on that plate, or you being in the middle of the meeting of a meeting, and looking away and asking yourself, like, what is the bigger meaning here? What's the bigger purpose here that I am part of, and how do I lead from that? So tell us a little bit more about what is that bigger purpose if you think about the arcs of your life that you are learning, or that you know that you are part of and therefore want to be of service to.
Yeah. 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 Well, I think it has to do something with my values, and my values are based on that I'm a Christian. I not from the beginning, yeah, well, from the family I'm from, but then there was a time that I didn't know what to do with that. And after, when I was about 40, I reconnected with those values. So I think the connection with Ubuntu, with Desmond Tutu, has to do with that you know that your purpose on earth is to contribute to society, to contribute and to stand for people who maybe have not the good starting position as we have, to serve society, to capture also the creation of God. Those things are important for me. And by all the things I do, sometimes you have to make difficult decisions, but if it can link to that it is important for the greater whole, for society, for humanity, for the nature, then I can follow that path. It's I think the last years you can make it very big, and sometimes it can be disappointing because you can't be that contributive. The contribution can be not that big. We only a short period on Earth. So the last years, I think I tried to make it maybe a bit smaller, so it can also be small contributions. But in everything I do, I want to be close to that greater whole, to have impact. That's what drives me every day, I think.
I love that. So that sense of deep connectedness to the greater whole. I hear you also say that this is not necessarily lovey-dovey. It's also about difficult decisions and being guided to make difficult decisions by that greater whole. Maybe you can say a little bit more about that, and also maybe say a bit more about how Ubuntu plays into that, and what that is for you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, in the work I'm doing, if I was a doctor or a social worker, it will be very easy to follow that path. But I came into responsible positions in organizations, and sometimes organizations are in bad weather and have to focus on have to make a new strategy or something like that. So then I find it as a responsibility for me to make people enthusiastic about this new course, to try to bring new energy in an organization, try to empower people on that. But sometimes it's necessary to work with less people, or when there is a financial problem or a quality problem. Sometimes the fit between the organization and people isn't ideal anymore. So being a leader, I always say that knowing, getting to know what is a true leader. If you sit on a table with someone, you have to tell he or she is losing her job. then it's not very difficult. But that's the moment where it comes on. Being a leader is not always difficult, but then at that moment, that's the moment of truth. If you can stay in connection with someone, but you have very bad news for him or her. So then it comes to being authentic, being honest, have courage to tell the true story and try not to lose the contact with the person.
Yes, yes. Well, let's explore that a little bit more, because like when you fire somebody or you let somebody go, well, that is for both people hard. Also definitely for the person that's being let go of in many cases. So you said a little bit about I stay connected, or I practice connectedness by being authentic, by staying truthful, and then also looking for not losing the connection with the other person. So how do you work on not losing the connection with the other person? Because the other person, I can imagine, and I've experienced also myself, can be reactive or emotional or despondent, or there can be despair. How do you work with all that?
Yeah, I try to be honest on that moment, telling the why, and also accepting that maybe this person will be angry or emotional, or sometimes I'm at that moment not the person who can help this person in a couple of days, but try to stay connected with him or her, because after a couple of days or after a couple of weeks, he or she can comes into another phase, and sometimes you can reconnect them as well. But it can also be challenge if someone is angry at you at that moment. I think it's important to let it be as well, because if then I want to be that everyone's friendly to me, that wouldn't help this person. But we're giving space for the process this person is in, and but also sometimes after a while, after the bitterness and the angry period is over, sometimes you can reconnect, and that person sees that maybe the fit isn't that good anymore, or maybe there is another opportunity, or try to help someone, but not try to be always the most friendly person, because sometimes your message is very hard, or give also room for the emotions of the person.
Yes, yes. I imagine you sort of standing in that plate, on that plate, in that place that you alluded to earlier about the bigger purpose that holds you in place, and also that creates a space for both you to stay in your truth and also to allow for the process with the other person to unfold, where you don't follow a niceness recipe, where
Yeah.
you're able to be truthful and not deceptively nice, for example, about it. That is also a great sign of respect for the other person, because inherently you're speaking to the truth of the other person, and connecting to their truth, what's really
Yeah.
going on, as opposed to being deceptive about it. So that is very beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Stepping back for a moment, you mentioned Ubuntu, Christian values, maybe a Freudian slip, values. Say a bit more how you have learned in your life to stand in those values, and maybe also how you may have sometimes be challenged to stand in these values, and what have you learned maybe from the valleys also.
Yeah, a good question. Ubuntu was something what came on my path, and which was so I recognize it so much, and also in the context of South Africa, where values like truth but also reconciliation were very important. So that's what I try to integrate in my life as well. I remember we had a very nice visit from the daughter of Desmond Tutu to NHL Stenden, and she gave some examples from how her father works on it every day. That picking up a piece of paper was also part of Ubuntu, and feeling being humble and show some kind of hospitality and connectiveness to people every day in every situation, and that inspires me a lot. That isn't always easy, because sometimes being a good leader sometimes make it difficult to have good conversation, good relation with all people, and when you have to make difficult decisions. But when I know what I'm doing, when I know that this is the right course, when trying to look myself right into the mirror every day, I can follow that path, even if sometimes you need some courage as well. And I also have experienced once in one of the working space I was that I was in a situation where I wasn't in my best power. That had to do with the organization. It had to do with the board I was working for. There was some discussion within that board, and then I find it difficult to find my position. And then I felt that I withdraw from my responsibility, which wasn't I wasn't normally. I'm not normally doing that because responsibility is very important for me. I learned that from a young age, and I find it also pleasant to feel that responsibility. That's part of being the greater whole. So when I felt that I was withdrawing and there was a distance between the heart of the organization and the strategy and me, that was the moment I said, well, I quit this organization. I can't contribute anymore because, well, this is not the best of me. I can't give the best of me anymore. And then then I will be very unhappy, and I think the organization also if I will continue.
I understand that. That sort of brings me to this question of you looking yourself in the mirror, because I can imagine, and I find myself those moments of truth, connecting to my truth, especially if it's a decision involving other people, hard. These are challenging moments. So how do you connect to your truth, and how do you know that it is true for you?
Yeah, that's a difficult question. You never know. What I find extremely important is that I have the mindset for that. And if I'm very busy and I'm running from appointment to appointment, then you can easily lose yourself in connection with yourself. So what I need is I'm sitting on my study room and I'm looking out. I have the opportunity that my spouse has a riding school, so I see all around horses. Being in nature, being with horses, sometimes working with them, that helps me to feel connected with nature, and that's also connecting with myself. Because when I'm very busy, I'm working in my head all the time, and to come back into my body, come back to earth, literally, I find it very nice to be around here, working, feeding the horses, walking, riding. Also, walking is a very good way for me to stay connected with myself. I also like long distance walking, and sometimes you get in some kind of rhythm, which can be some kind of that's very good for your mind, for your rest. And sometimes you're walking, and then all your thoughts are gone, and then something new is coming in. So that are ways for me to stay close to myself.
I love that. That's opening the door to something deeper. So looking out the windows, seeing the horses, maybe your spouse, maybe feeding the horses, working with them, taking a walk in nature. And I also heard you say about, I sort of go beyond my thinking and something deeper opens up. And I think that is so interesting, because in all the conversations and all my own reflections about connectedness, that is often where we go towards that space. Father Thomas Keating talks about this a lot, the space beyond thinking that opens up a deeper wisdom that is always available. We just don't listen to it all the time. And I love your description of being busy and then, I come back into myself. Come back to myself. What does it feel like? We talked about being in your body. What does it feel like when you are connected to your true self, and what does it feel like when you're not?
Well, when I'm not, then my spouse sometimes said, "Can you turn off the turbo?" So that's it. Then I'm too busy to. Maybe I think people recognize that too busy, very quick thinking, and I have the imagination that I'm very productive, but I'm not. And sometimes you need that kind of energy, doing things. But that then I'm not connected to what is really important. Yeah. And when I am, I feel far more relaxed. Yeah, I can have deeper thoughts. I can also have it when I am really into a good book, for example. When you are in the story, it's like time is passing by without knowing. And that's also with walking. When you are it's some kind of meditation, and in that state, new ideas come up, or well, sometimes answers. And for me, I said I'm a Christian, and sometimes in a church I can have that same kind of energy. What I like that it's also some kind of meditation with some songs, and then I need to be close to myself to know what is really important. I had some moments I can remember that I was preparing one speech, and I was in church, and when I was thinking about that, not in a very direct way, but it comes through my mind, and then I thought, well, this is completely the not a good way to have this speech. I go back to something far more, what's far more deeper and closer to myself. That moments can happen in church, in nature, sitting on a horseback, walking. I thought, no, this is no good. I have to come back to myself. Yeah.
I love that. I love that you have expanded, at least how I'm seeing it, I'm hearing it, the idea of church. That this practice space is sometimes in a building with the liturgy and songs and prayers and text and all these things. And sometimes it's feeding the horses. Or sometimes it's your spouse saying, "Hey, turn off the turbo."
Yeah.
Or just taking or reading a good book. That's very beautiful. Can you say a bit more about how that connectedness in you has matured over time? We have listeners from different stages of life, and I can imagine that connecting for you in your 20s might have looked a little different from the way it's looking today.
Yeah, I think that's true. That's getting older, I think. What you said remind me of, I once did a course, and I do courses quite a lot because I think that's also a way to develop yourself. I did a course with Manfred Vries. That's a Dutch guru on management, and he's psychiatrist as well. So those courses are very deeply, and it was at INSEAD, a very international group of leaders all over the world. And he actually said two things: as a leader, leadership is teamwork, and you have to know yourself as a leader. So there, and also with other courses, I have the feeling that I know myself bit by bit more, knowing what is my background, where I come from, what does that bring in my way of looking to the world. It's getting confused. The other way is knowing myself better, but I think I get more questions about the world every year. I get older. Sometimes I think I understand it every day less instead of more. But I think I know myself better, knowing also in my work what kind of persons I need surrounded me, being effectiveness. So being effective. So that has a development throughout the years. So when I firstly thought I had strategic discussion, that's where I'm from. I now know that is only that is not a goal, but that is a meaning. And what I really looking for is to contribute, to have impact in all kinds of ways. I also know that I'm coming from a very harmonious family, a very nice background, a very nice youth. So but that is a pattern where I didn't learn very good to have a quarrel. So those kind of things I found out, worked on it. I also once did a course in executive coaching. I never will be an executive coach, but it learns me all kind of methods to know myself better. And that's what I try to do all my life to find other parts of myself.
I love that sense of finding other parts of yourself as you're letting more complexity in,
Mm-hmm.
and that pointer of leadership is teamwork and it is knowing yourself. And I'm reminded of what you said in the beginning of our conversation, which I heard you say before. As I'm getting older, I might adjust my purpose a little bit. That I'm thinking about my purpose a little differently, maybe even bigger scale, maybe even smaller scale. Also knowing the brevity of the time that we're in. So let's explore that connection a little bit more about that after the break. I suggest we take a short break and hear a little bit more after the break about how you've been getting more into connecting to yourself and putting that to service in different ways, also with more awareness of the brevity that of the life that we're in here with. So thank you so much so far, Erica, and let's take a short break now.
Thank you.
You are listening to Rooted and Unwavering, presented by Growth Leaders Network, the leadership, team, and culture development company. If you would like to learn more about working on connectedness for yourself, your team, or organization, please contact Growth Leaders Network on LinkedIn. And now, back to the show.
All right. So this question of connectedness. So if you're just dialing in or thinking about this podcast, we've been talking to Erica Schaper, who's the chairman of NHL Stenden, University of Applied Sciences in the north of the Netherlands, from which we're also hosting this podcast today. And we've been talking about how connectedness is something that has matured over time. It is something that for Erica is about connecting to deeper meaning, really taking your stand into something. It's about also realizing that our deeper truth sometimes has us make unpopular decisions and give space for others to be in that. We've had a conversation about how being connected to ourselves is core to leadership. And the question that is on the table now is how is your sense of service and purpose, maybe that you connect to, been evolving as you mature and maybe get more face to face with the brevity of this life that we're in?
Yes, I think that when I was younger, even as a kid, I had the idea that if it would be possible to bring peace to the world, I would do it immediately. But seeing how the world develops, especially at this moment, the complexity is growing, or maybe I see it more. We're far from peace in the world, and that's then you can do two things. You can get very depressed that maybe the world is not getting better every day, but maybe worse every day. But you can also make your own contribution a bit smaller, a bit closer. I think also the COVID period helped me with that to bring you back to the essence of life, your spouse, your family, the place you're living, the community you're in. And maybe you cannot save the whole world, but maybe you can contribute to a few people, or maybe you can make it a bit smaller. So that the impact isn't because some problems can't be solved. I think that is one of my insights from the last year. I did a course where I made a trip to the Middle East with a group of Dutch leaders to Jordan and Lebanon and Israel. Well, if there is any place in the world where you can think, well, I have no idea how this can be solved for the coming generations, it is Israel. So that struck me really. So sometimes maybe I was the type of leader who thought, well, if I put all my effort in it, I will solve it. And the more complex the problem is, the better I can put my energy in it. Yeah, some problems can't be solved, not by me, and it made me a bit more humble, I think.
That sense of humility, and I relate to that as powerlessness while taking responsibility for your part is what I'm hearing. So how do you write that balance? Because I think about that as well, I can find peace letting go, right? And saying that this is not for me to solve. At the same time, I also don't want to be like an ostrich, putting my head in the sand, So how do you work with that? How do you stay connected to what's really true for you and not make it too small or too big?
Yes, I try to be close to myself if I'm in the right position in work. If I can contribute to an organization where students are prepared for the world, I really like it to be working with young people and prepare them for the world of today. With all the people working for NHL Stenden, well, that gives me a lot of fun to do that, but also satisfaction. And I think that, yeah, well, if I'm good at that, there I can contribute. So if organizations, I can help develop organizations where it's good studying, but also good working. I can play that role. That's an everyday balance. But I'm still on the good spot, I think, there. And in my surrounding here, in my family and the people we live with, yeah, we try to look how we can contribute. For example, here on the riding school, we have a long time ago. It was when Hetty had her 50th birthday, and she's now almost 60. And we invited 50 children who want to also ride on ponies but can afford that. And well, that's a group of children which comes here every week. And a couple of months before, there were also a lot of Ukraine children. So we try to give them the pleasure of riding. And that's a very small initiative, but well, yeah, we think, okay, if we can do that, maybe that's our purpose to do that. So making it smaller, giving children a good way, sometimes also adults here for camps. Well, see what we can do within the possibilities we have.
Great. And so I'm just wondering back of these. So I'm seeing you like make contributions to things that are within your scope of work. For example, with NHL Stenden, so beautiful, and then doing it at your spouse's horse riding farm, inviting children in. And we talked a little bit. You started alluding to the societal issues. So, how do you navigate that? And do you feel peace in your heart when you watch the news? Or what happens with you? Or do you not watch the news?
Yeah. Yes, I do watch the news. I couldn't imagine that I won't do that because I feel responsible for my part in the world. And things like what's happening now in Ukraine, all the populist parties who are getting bigger and bigger. Some discussions where solidarity is far ahead. I find it difficult. And but also things like climate change. Am I doing enough? Do we give the earth to our children and grandchildren in a proper way? Well, I think the answer is no. And I'm not sure if I've done enough. Of course, I think we all have that. But when I was a child, I was very worried about pollution with oil. I couldn't sleep for that. So that's part of my genes, I think. But now I think I can. Nobody will get better if I'm worried. I better can try to do what I can do. I can't solve the problem of all the refugees looking for a better place, but maybe I can give a future for some people here in my surrounding, and well, that's what I tried then.
Go ahead, keep going.
So make it smaller. See what my contribution is. Not knowing if that's enough, if I can't do more, but I don't want to be depressed by the situation because no one. And then I don't help anyone with that as well.
Yes. So I hear you being purposeful also about your inner state, and saying, my inner state. I cannot give into worries. Etty Hillesum, a Dutch non-survival of, I think it was the Holocaust, wrote
It was the
that,
Holocaust, yeah.
yes, wrote like worries are like fleas. I gotta get rid of them because that allows me to stay, and I'm paraphrasing right now this last bit, to help me to stay in the presence of God, of truth, of strength, of what is here. And what I hear you say, I hear that you talk about it almost casually. Like I hear it very much like this is like second nature for you at this point. It's like, no, I'm not going to let myself get down by worries or other non-productive thought forms because I need to be of service, and
Yeah,
I
yeah,
can't do it from that place.
yeah. Yeah, that's exactly the way I look at it. Try to contribute where I can, not making it too big. And also, that's what I try to do, enjoy every day. See the beautiful creation of nature. That's also inspiring for me as well.
Yes.
Because there are a lot of people who, but also be aware of the privileged life I have. I'm very aware of that, and I'm very grateful for that as well.
Yes. And I see you putting it to service
Yeah,
relentlessly,
yeah,
like
yeah,
very, very clearly, very clearly.
yeah.
I want to go back to the time that I don't think you and I have ever talked about, which is your time when you were working in the Dutch trade union, FNV.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I remember as a child, which is when I was living in the Netherlands, looking at the FNV and seeing them being involved in all kinds of conflicts, almost like that was their business. Now, I may have completely misunderstood. So, can you say a little bit about how you worked with staying connected and being connected in that organization,
Yeah, yeah,
trade
yeah,
union?
yeah. Yeah, it is a very interesting organization because it has every day to do with power, bargaining power, balancing power. And I think the power of the working people is very important. In balancing also in capitalism on the scale of the Netherlands, for example, politically, it's very important that the working people are, that there's someone who stand behind them. The organization itself, the working organization of the FNV, is a very complex organization. Bit conservative sometimes, but people, they are looking for people who are good in bargaining, but they do that internally as well. So every day you have to do with power, with I never had in my life so much petitions from all kinds of subjects that people have organized themselves, setting signs for things, and that makes it difficult. It was I find it one of the most complex organizations to work for because you can nothing do on your position, but all looking for can I make little steps. All my political abilities are stretched to the max in this
Yes.
organization. And that makes it interesting as well. But it cost me also a lot of energy. So I didn't work there very long, but I learned a lot of it. After 4 years, I thought, well, it's now good for the next one. But it's
Uh-huh.
a very interesting organization.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. So when you look back at that, because we can see every chapter in life as a tremendous teacher, whatever is written in that chapter, whether we like it or
Mm-hmm.
we don't like it. If we're thinking about connectedness and staying true to yourself, and you're talking about power, maybe staying connected to your true power or working with power around you, what did you learn from that period that really has served you well now that you are the chairman of this large university in the Netherlands?
Yeah, yeah. But the interesting part of the FNV was that you're working very close to all the political decisions made because the FNV is at every table. Everything that has to do with economic problems or with I find that very good and within the values for standing for people who aren't able to stand for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
It was close to my values.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That part was close to my values. The other side is that the working of the organization, which had so much to do with power, I find that sometimes hard. That that it wasn't about the best idea, but it was about can you get a majority or not, and that wasn't that close to my heart. That was the difficult part of it. But I also can have some kind of fulfillment if you see that something is very difficult and you can make small steps, and after a while you look back and you see, well, I still have realized slight changes.
Yes.
So that was it was well really a learning period for me.
Yes. So I'm hearing something about the wisdom of small steps,
Mm-hmm.
which is also a very powerful tool to stay connected to our true self, because our thinking mind, you could say the ego is always ahead of the band. Maybe your spouse will call that turbo, like you're ahead of it, so we're
Yeah.
not anymore, right? But the wisdom of small steps, I think there's even a method called Kaizen that talks about that, where like we are staying, like it's a way to stay in the moment, and it's also a way to practice humility, just like we've been talking about
Yeah.
with the society's issues that we're facing at the moment, the wisdom of small steps and having faith in those. And I also hear you talk about the energy that you connected with this organization that takes a stand for people that don't have a stand by themselves, or not much of it, that sense. And I see it a little bit as a red thread through your life, because you're now taking a stand for students and young people in society. They're just starting. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
take a stand for them and making sure they get the best treatment, even though that may not be in the best financial interest short term of the society. So it takes some standing for as well. So can you say a bit more about your staying connected to yourself, and you talked about enjoying, like, tell me more about leading an organization that is serving students, young people. What is that like for you? What does that bring out in you?
Yeah, I really can enjoy when I go to the university, to the buildings, when I enter the campus, and I can feel the energy of all those young people doing all kinds of things, sitting, laying down, having funny parties, and so I really love that energy. What I really like, if we can bring them a broader perspective than they come in with, like internationalization is a very important part of the strategy of NHL Stenden, giving them tools to cope with diversity in all forms they will meet in their life. Some of them will have an international career, so they will meet a lot of internationals, but others will meet other cultures, other ways of living. And if we can contribute that they're not afraid of that, what I see with a lot of populist parties, but they can embrace that, they can see the value of that, they can practice working together with all types of students from all social classes, cultural backgrounds. Well, I really can enjoy that, and seeing them growing, and also see the joy our employees have in working with students. Yeah, that gives me a lot of fulfillment.
I can't help but think about the harmony family that you grew up with, and about bringing people together.
Yeah,
That being one of the things that really makes you tick, and seeing that, like, I saw you, and I can imagine you also now these days walking into the buildings and seeing the students do what they do, and you never know
yeah,
exactly quite what they're doing next. I'm sure it's like it's
yeah.
very creative, so
They
it's
can
very good.
vary. Yeah, and also for me, that's also where we're also part of the ecosystem in the northern of the Netherlands. So with students, with our research, with our the knowledge to contribute to the region, that's the same energy for me. Sometimes with students participate in all kinds of programs, helping entrepreneurs to also to broaden their vision. That kind of processes gives me a lot of joy.
Yes, I hear that. I hear that. Erica, I always think of you as a person who is unconsciously excellent at so many things, like being kind.
Oh,
Well, that's what I think. That's what I
okay,
think.
okay.
And I live in the States, so I get to say these things in the Dutch society. I would say, you're not bad at those. Maybe,
Yeah.
but I've lived in
And
the US for
especially in the
50 years.
north, they say that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right. So, but the US, we say things like that. And I do believe that from my heart, that you're unconsciously excellent, meaning this, it comes second nature to you, like being humane, connecting people, staying connected to yourself. I witnessed you in meetings also that weren't always the easiest ones. For some people, they are at a different stage of the journey. Maybe you see some students, walking around that, may get overwhelmed with whatever it may be, something that's happening in class, something that's happening in their world or in their country or in their family, or a person that's working in an organization, and they may not see they might be looking for that plate that you found in that course. It's like, yes, that's it, right? What would you say to them, to those people that might be a little lost or feel a little lost in the wilderness of life? What would you say to them?
Yeah. Well, I would say give yourself time and space to look for what's really important for you, and try to have the courage to do the journey inside. Go look into yourself. And sometimes that's not easy, because I really know how privileged I was also in the way I was grown up. And some people have far more difficult lives, so that may be far more difficult. But try to find where your drive is, where your energy is, and stay close to that, and try to be courage to find your way, and not letting down what the society wants from you, or the surroundings, or sometimes family wants from you, but try to find your own path in life. I think that it's important. There are all kinds of people who wants to help you with that, but the journey inside you can only make yourself. For me, most difficult is the type of students or employees who seems to have not be motivated. Some all kinds of energy, even resistance is energy. But if people say I don't care, that's for me the hardest way to deal. But still, I would say try to find, and it can cost some time. Give yourself time to find out what really drives you in life.
I can imagine people then asking, well, yes, I look inside, and I may discover that the life that I'm living actually does not match up with the
Yeah,
values that I'm discovering inside when I look beyond my maybe fears that I have, or the social programming from society, from organizations, from family, from community, whatever it might be. And like, oh, this, like my heart says this way, but life is going that way. Like, what what would you say to them? Like, how do you work through that?
yes. I see that sometimes with employees, who fear to take steps to change things in their lives, thinking that they have to stick where they are because what kind of reasons? Sometimes reasons like that you bought a house or whatever can be very frightening. Change can be very frightening, and I would say, and not knowing everyone's situation, of course, that at the end, if you follow your heart in what you're really good at, what you really give energy, that will fulfill you more than when you're in a place where you think I do not belong here. It costs so much energy, and life is short, and energy, the best you can give other people is your time and energy. So, well, see that you give the best of yourself at a good moment, and don't spoil too much energy in that way. That's what I would say.
Yes, yes. This what really lands with me from what you're saying that really hits me is this really conscious choice of how I'm choosing my time and attention in this world, because I'm here for a very, very short time. You know,
Mhm.
I'm reminded of the story of Jesus in the New Testament where his parents ask him, "Where have you been?" And he responds, "Don't you know I'm doing my father's work?" And to me, that is such a beautiful parable almost of stepping out of the societal conditioned consciousness and having the courage to find your own work, first of all, and then do
Yeah,
it and follow it, even if that may be challenging, because you're challenging some things inside of you and sometimes also outside of you. So yeah, thank you for that.
Yes, and that can be hard to do. I mean, sometimes you have to tell your family or your surroundings that maybe you choose another path. I live together with a woman, and also gone through the path that I have to tell my family that that I love, that I fell in love with a woman. I don't never forget the words my father. He passed away 2 years ago. He said then, "Well, I don't hope you find it difficult to say this because his unconditional love, that he loves me anyway, and my mother as well, that helps me a lot. And that's not for everyone, of course, the reaction of their family, but sometimes you worried a bit more about taking a step than what actually will happen. So try to, if you stay close to yourself, that makes you authentic, and most of the time people will accept that.
Thank you for that. So we're getting towards unbelievably our closing minutes already. This conversation flew by, Erica. What would be your closing reflections that you would like to share with listeners who are tuning in, likely to learn more about how do I connect myself, especially in a world that feels quite disconnected and also triggers my being disconnected at times? What would you like to say to them as a close?
Well, maybe what helped me, but I can give more than what my experience was, is maybe if you make it a bit smaller to see what you can do and what is important for you, that makes it a bit more feasible to see what's happening in the world. I think that, and try to find out where your passion is, where your heart lies, and contribute. And where I also thought that peace in the world was my mission, that was maybe a bit too big. So try to make a mission in life that's also doable, and that maybe that will help you.
Thank you for that. I hear what you're saying, the humble courage
Yeah.
of the warrior in with the of the heart in this world. So thank you so much, Erica. It was truly a pleasure to speak with you as always, whether we are on the screen or in a restaurant or in a conference room somewhere. It's always wonderful. Some of the things that really hit me today as I was speaking with you was this sense of humility and deep honesty with yourself, your willingness to take a stand and find the sense of energy comes from being connected to this bigger purpose and this bigger meaning. And you then being in that place of service in your career, in the places that you are leading, the discipline that I hear in your unconscious excellence, like I'm not going to give my energy away to worries or things that are not helpful right now, and the humility you have to carve out your piece in this dance and mystery of life that we're in, and then also your suggestion for those of us who are looking to not give up and to make the space and to not get distracted. So thank you so much, Erica, for being with us today. Thank you all for listening to this podcast and radio show of Rooted and Unwavering. I invite you to subscribe to this podcast, Rooted and Unwavering, if you like, or also join us for our monthly Growth Leaders Network community conversations that you can find on LinkedIn. We'll be here next again in a few weeks, where I'll be speaking with my colleague Rick Gage from Growth Leaders Network, where actually we'll take a step back and review some of the core lessons that we learned in these first four webcasts. The ongoing question that we will be sitting with and that I'll be sitting with is, how do I stay connected with myself so I can be of highest service? So thank you all for listening. That's it for today. Thank you again, Erica, for your presence, for your
It was a great pleasure. Thank you for so much.
Wonderful. And for also having the horses and your spouse be part of the experience. That was just wonderful. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening. I hope you found some helpful nuggets here today that help you connect more deeply into who you truly are and put that to work in this precious life that is so short. You've been listening to Rooted and Unwavering. where we help leaders connect more deeply to their innate potential. I'm your host, Hilke Faber. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us in today's episode of Rooted and Unwavering, Leadership Conversations about Courageous Connectedness, presented by the leadership development company, Growth Leaders Network. To learn more, subscribe to this podcast, connect with Growth Leaders Network and Hilke Faber on LinkedIn, or read Hilke's award-winning book, Taming Your Crocodiles. Now take a moment and appreciate something that is great about you. Celebrate the gift that you are and enjoy connecting more deeply to your best self today. See you next time on Rooted and Unwavering.